I move that Council Bill 22-0589 be placed upon final consideration and do pass.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. The required public hearing for Council Bill 22-589 is open. May we please have the staff report?
Good evening, Madam President, members of City Council. My name is Tracy Huggins, and I am the Executive Director of the Denver Urban Renewal Authority, here this evening requesting Council's approval of the 3015 East Colfax Urban Redevelopment Plan to facilitate development of the 3015 East Colfax Urban Redevelopment Area. The proposed urban redevelopment area is 37,000 square foot site comprised of 3 parcels situated along East Colfax Avenue between Milwaukee and St. Paul Streets in the City Park Statistical Neighborhood. The urban redevelopment area consists primarily of the All-In Motel and its parking lot. The motel is no longer operating, having closed to new patrons in March of 2022. The All-In Motel, originally the Fountain Inn, was built in 1959 and was one of the earliest motels developed along Colfax Avenue. It offered patrons premier accommodations for its time, including rooms fitted with radios, televisions, and music equipment, and was an attraction for tourists and locals due to the extravagant Gold Room restaurant and cocktail lounge located on the motel's first floor. The Gold Room was a popular choice for concert goers due to its proximity to several of Denver's well-known theaters and musical venues, many of which are still active today. Unfortunately, tourism and commercial activity steeply declined along Colfax Avenue following the completion of Interstate 70 in the mid-1960s. Many local establishments along the once bustling Colfax Avenue closed due to the loss in tourism business, including the Fountain Inn and Gold Room in 1969. The Fountain Inn underwent several management and ownership changes after its closure. The motel's business continued to decline throughout the late 20th century due to travelers' preference of I-70, an exodus of nearby residents moving to the suburbs, and an increase in criminal activity along Colfax Avenue. The property was rebranded as the All-In Motel in 2003, and a new bar opened in the first floor restaurant space until it also closed in 2012. The restaurant space remains vacant today. Despite the multiple changes of ownership, the property has remained a motel. The All-In Motel has operated for several years at well below its capacity, while displaying significant signs of physical deterioration. The All-In Motel's deteriorating condition erodes the integrity of the historical property and is a detriment to Colfax Avenue, contributing to an inhospitable pedestrian environment inconsistent with the vision and goals for Colfax Avenue as described in Plan 2040. The objectives of the Urban Redevelopment Plan are to reduce or eliminate blighted conditions and to stimulate the continued growth and development of the urban redevelopment area. The proposed project meets the following objectives of the Urban Redevelopment Plan: to renew and improve the character and environment of the area and its surroundings by preventing or ameliorating economic, physical, and environmental deterioration. Encourage the reuse of existing buildings, including historic preservation and adaptive reuse. To protect and enhance the character of structures designated for historic preservation. To promote a diverse, sustainable neighborhood economy, including mixed use and commercial development opportunities within the area. To assist the city in cultivating complete and inclusive neighborhoods. Encourage land use patterns where pedestrians are safe and welcome. To improve the economy of the city by stabilizing and upgrading property values, and to achieve the goals as outlined in adopted city plans. A conditions study was commenced in August of 2019 and finalized in June of 2020. This study supported a finding of blight based on the presence of the following 4 conditions: slum, deteriorated or deteriorating structures, unsanitary or unsafe conditions, deterioration of site or other improvements, and the existence of substantial physical underutilization or vacancy of sites, buildings, or other improvements. The finding of blight is a legislative finding by City Council based upon the blight study, which has been filed with the City Clerk and other evidence presented at this public hearing. The redevelopment project will rehabilitate and adaptively reuse the historic motel building and construct a new 4-story, approximately 15,000 square foot building on the southeastern portion of the site. When completed, the project will feature an 81-room hotel, ground-level commercial uses, including a restaurant, coffee shop, pool and lounge that would be situated between these two buildings that will be available not only by the hotel guests but also by the public via guest passes, and approximately 700 square feet of affordable space for community serving uses or businesses that may be vulnerable to displacement. In addition, there will be 56 surface parking stalls located behind the buildings. The project will be undertaken by a local developer, Brian Toerber, with Inspire Colfax LLC, who purchased the property out of bankruptcy in 2016. Once completed, the whole hotel will be managed by New Waterloo, a hospitality and restaurant group from Austin, Texas, with extensive experience managing this type of project. The Fountain Inn was designed by well-known local architect Aubrey B. Brailsford in the popular international style of the 1950s and 60s. In July of 2020, the current owner was successful in their effort to have the property listed on the National Register of Historic Places for its association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of Denver's history. As noted in this rendering of the project from 1958, the project will not only return the original building to its prior state, but will add new construction that is complementary to the historic structure. Any urban redevelopment plan and project must be determined to further the goals and objectives of Plan 2040 and its approved supplements. As this diagram intends to show, not every goal and objective of each plan can ever be achieved through urban renewal activities. However, we believe this plan and project does meet several key criteria of the city plans. As this project is focused on historic preservation and quality infill development, we have summarized the relevant sections of Plan 2040, Blueprint Denver, and the East Central Area Plan with an emphasis on these key outcomes. So starting with historic preservation, and these are intended to be color-coded to be able to indicate which document they are coming from. So from Plan 2040, the prioritization of the reuse of existing buildings. From Blueprint Denver states to incentivize the preservation of structures and features that contribute to the established character of an area. And from the East Central Area Plan, encourage high-quality design and character preservation in centers and corridors. Looking to those goals related to quality infill development, Plan 2040 states encourage quality infill development that is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and offers opportunities for increased amenities. Blueprint Denver seeks to ensure an active and pedestrian-friendly environment that provides a true mixed-use character in centers and corridors. And the East Central Area Plan notes to provide additional support to community-serving retail businesses and improve the development environment along Colfax. Blueprint Denver also incorporates equity in the planning process by measuring 3 key indicators across the city: access to opportunity, vulnerability to displacement, and housing and jobs diversity. An existing analysis from Blueprint Denver indicates that the urban redevelopment area lies within a context that has high access to opportunity, moderate vulnerability to displacement, and low job and housing diversity. The plan will foster development that will improve the area's equitable outcomes, including creating businesses that will bring new employment opportunities to the neighborhood. A specific addition to the project, based on the potential vulnerability to displacement of businesses along Colfax Avenue, is approximately 700 square feet of affordable commercial space designated for use by local businesses, artists, nonprofits, or other community-serving uses. In addition, DURA's involvement in this project has presented an opportunity to provide relocation assistance to the existing motel occupants. Colorado urban renewal law requires urban renewal authorities to provide a feasible method for the relocation of individuals and families who may be displaced by an urban renewal project. To adhere to this statutory requirement, DURA adopted a relocation assistance policy, which closely mirrors the federal relocation requirements and outlines a process for DURA to follow when an approved urban renewal project will displace individuals. When the motel closed in March of this year, there were 37 individuals utilizing the property. To be clear, there were no families in the property. From the beginning, our efforts were not intended to simply relocate individuals from the motel to like housing, but instead to actively pursue much more suitable and stable housing for each occupant. To achieve this effort, we engaged a housing team comprised of Lachelle Coffee LLC to serve as the relocation coordinator, Be Connected LLC to provide housing navigator services, as well as the Mental Health Center of Denver to provide occupant support services specifically for their clients occupying the motel. This slide outlines the process and benefits of the housing stability efforts, including preparation of individualized assessments, application and lease support, as well as follow-up support after lease signing to assure the housing plan is meeting the occupant's needs. The assistance benefits include 42 months of rental assistance consistent with the relocation policy, which ensures that low-income occupants will not be spending more than 30% of their income on replacement housing. Moving expenses are also covered, and every one of the 37 occupants were offered this assistance regardless of their tenure at the motel. The relocation and housing stability efforts began when the motel closed in March and are continuing today. This slide provides the status of our efforts to date. 13 of the 37 original occupants, or 34%, have secured stable housing, with another 3, or an additional 8%, with lease applications pending. 4 occupants have completed their assessments and are actively working with the relocation and housing navigator team to identify units to meet their needs, including proximity to their employment. Since our briefing at Council Committee on May 24th, an additional 3 occupants who were previously non-responsive have commenced the assessment process. Today, there are 3 individuals who have completed that process but have additional considerations that are making the ability to identify units more challenging. 2 persons have been removed from the motel. 5 individuals who are aware of but who have declined the relocation services have moved to other motels along the corridor. 3 occupants moved from the motel at the beginning of this process and provided no forwarding information. And finally, 1 person remains at the all-in and has not yet engaged in the relocation process. And as I noted, Ms. Coffey is present to answer any additional questions related to this process. The Urban Redevelopment Plan was submitted to the Denver Planning Board on May 4th of this year with a staff recommendation to find the plan to be in conformance with the Comp Plan 2040. Planning Board voted 4-1 to find the plan to be in conformance with Plan 2040 and its adopted supplements. The bylaws of the 11-member Planning Board require all actions of the board must be taken by the concurring votes of the majority of the members present or 5 votes, whichever is greater. As the board was unable to pass the motion to find the plan to be in conformance with the Plan 2040 due to not meeting the required concurring votes, the matter has been forwarded to the City Council as, quote, Planning Board provides no recommendation on this matter, end quote. A letter to this effect has been submitted as part of the record of this hearing. Per the Urban Renewal Statute, if no recommendation is received from Planning Board within 30 days from their review, City Council may proceed with the public hearing on the proposed plan. This plan and project seek to remedy the blighting conditions of the area through the adaptive reuse of a historic building, thereby providing clearly needed economic revitalization along the East Colfax corridor, all while supporting the collective goals of seeking housing stability. The Urban Redevelopment Plan will authorize DURA to finance projects within the urban redevelopment area by the use of tax increment financing. The need for public financial assistance is directly related to the extraordinary costs to eliminate the blighting conditions and support the adaptive reuse of the historically significant structure. DURA staff has reviewed the development budget and pro forma submitted by the developer and believes there is a financial gap in the $31.2 million development budget of approximately $3.5 million. This represents approximately 11% of the total project development budget. This financing gap will be addressed by reimbursing eligible costs through any property tax and sales tax increment generated only from within the tax increment area, which is coterminous with the urban redevelopment area, for a period not to exceed 25 years. The utilization of property tax increment invokes the requirement that before City Council can approve a new urban redevelopment plan, they must find that an agreement has been entered into between DURA and the affected taxing entities in regard to the allocation of property tax increment to the project. There are two other property taxing entities, Denver Public Schools and Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, now known as the Mile High Flood District. Both taxing entities were notified of the proposed urban redevelopment plan. Following that notification, both evaluated the impact the project may have on their ability to deliver services. Based on the project information provided, both DPS and Mile High Flood District have determined that the project will have limited impact on their ability to deliver services and have agreed to allow all increment derived from their respective mill levies to be paid to DURA to support the project. In addition, there is a cooperation agreement between the city and DURA, which governs the collection and remittance of both the property and sales tax increment to support the redevelopment project. It also limits the term of the tax increment area to the earlier of repayment of the DURA obligation, or 25 years. In considering the approval of the 3015 East Colfax Urban Redevelopment Plan, City Council must make the following additional legislative findings: that the boundaries of the area have been drawn as narrowly as feasible to accomplish the planning and development objectives of the plan, that written notice of this public hearing has been provided to all property owners, residents, and owners of business concerns within the urban redevelopment area. Written notice was mailed on May 20th of this year, at least 30 days prior to this public hearing. No more than 120 days have passed since the first public hearing before City Council on the plan, and this is the first consideration of an urban redevelopment plan for this site, and thus the City Council has not previously failed to approve an urban redevelopment plan for this site. That the urban redevelopment plan will afford maximum opportunity, consistent with the sound needs of Denver as a whole, for the redevelopment or rehabilitation of the area by private enterprise. The urban redevelopment plan does not consist of any area of open land, which is to be developed for residential or non-residential uses or any agricultural land. That the City and County of Denver can adequately finance, and agreements are in place to finance, any additional City and County of Denver infrastructure and services required to serve development within the 3015 East Colfax Urban Redevelopment Area for the period during which the incremental property taxes are paid to the authority. The plan allows for cooperative agreements between the city and DURA to address additional infrastructure requirements should they arise. And finally, no acquisition by eminent domain is authorized by this plan. The Denver Urban Renewal Authority has worked closely with the City and County of Denver, the developer, the housing stabilization team, and the neighborhood interests to bring forward this project. The redevelopment of this site, in addition to eliminating blighting conditions, will bring a new and exciting use to the historically significant building and generate new energy to this location along East Colfax Avenue. And we ask for your favorable consideration of this request.
All right, thank you, Tracy, for the staff report. We have 19 individuals signed up to speak. I'm going to call the first few speakers, and then we'll alternate back and forth. Our first speaker in person in chambers is Brian Toerber.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you, Tracy. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. My name is Brian Toerber, and I represent the owners of the All-In Motel. We purchased the motel out of bankruptcy in 2016 with plans to redevelop the site. Throughout our evaluation and review of various redevelopment options, we decided to move forward with the full renovation of the existing building as a hotel redevelopment project. Our evaluation lasted several years as we fully engaged with the community to hear firsthand what their idea of a successful outcome at this site would be. We had multiple discussions with various RNOs, stakeholders, neighbors, business improvement districts, and have received several letters of support from each to move forward with a hotel renovation project. Throughout the process, it was apparent a hotel would fill a void in the community as local neighborhood hotel accommodations weren't available, and it would further benefit National Jewish Hospital with the thousands of out-of-state visitors they have visiting their hotel annually. At the ground level, the hotel will incorporate a full-service restaurant servicing 3 meals a day, a pool for hotel guests and the neighborhood to enjoy, a neighborhood coffee and pastry shop. We'll have a hotel lobby bar for locals to use throughout the day to work or visit with friends and family. And we'll establish a partnership with local artists traveling through Denver and performing at the many music venues along Colfax for local accommodations for them. We have a total of 81 hotel guest rooms and 56 parking spaces. The hotel will employ approximately 120 people, many of which will be full-time jobs with full benefits, vacation, and retirement benefits. We successfully added the project to the National Register of Historic Places in 2020, as we felt it was a contributing structure of Colfax Avenue, and it added to its rich history. The preservation of historic structures are also called out for in the newly adopted East Area Central Plan and a community benefit. Furthermore, we redesigned the ground level to accommodate commercially affordable space, to be reserved for local businesses in need of affordable space for their small business to thrive. I'm happy to address any questions and ask for your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is joining us virtually, Jeff Harbaugh.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Harbaugh, and I'm asking you to vote no on the tax increment financing for 3015 East Colfax Avenue. The luxury hotel is not necessary at this time because it is not a community asset and provides no community benefits. The developer has admitted that his own development plans are financially risky, so that many lenders have turned him down, both before the pandemic ensued. Tracy Huggins of DURA said that the corridor is troubled and has been for some time. I have lived a block away from the motel for many years and disagree with this assertion. While his business may be troubled, the corridor is not. This is not a suitable investment property for a TIF, and it only extends to one property because the developer has no experience in developing or running a hotel. Mr. Toerber has said that he has received criticism from lenders that boutique hotels don't have national reservation systems and cannot operationalize any efficiencies. Secondly, Mr. Toerber has told that short-term rentals, STRs, are impacting boutique hotel stays. To be exact, a quick check of the city's database of short-term rentals shows that there are more than 300 STRs already in the City Park and Congress Park neighborhoods within walking distance of the site, according to the city's STR database. A luxury hotel is not needed in the area. I recently toured the property today and met residents who have not been contacted for housing. We are working to connect them with resources, not Denver urban renewal. When Mr. Toerber purchased the property, he told the city and county of Denver the residents and improvements would be made at the property. Instead, he made few, if any, repairs and was cited a handful of times for safety and health violations from the city and county of Denver. The photos of the property under Mr. Toerber's watch of more than 6 years shows the individual willing to let the property fall into total disrepair. Mr. Toerber has cited in 2019 for the kitchen being in disrepair and electrical being out of code and safety issue. Again, in 2019, the elevator was out of compliance. In 2020, cited for fire alarm issues, constant pest infestations of bed bugs and rats has also been an issue. During several meetings with Congress Park Neighbors RNO and South City Park RNO, Mr. Toerber admitted to displacing current residents who depend on city-issued housing vouchers, which All In Motel accepts. Some are still living there without any new housing identified. The motel is on a bus line and is centrally located so that residents are able to access community-based services and travel to and from work. To shutter the motel would further victimize the residents who call this home. Please vote no on this TIF.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person in chambers, Timothy Swanson.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me talk here at 9 o'clock on a Monday night, and thank you for engaging in this process. My name is Tim Swanson. I was born and raised in Denver. Proud to call this place my home. 5 years ago, I moved into the neighborhood and live on the 1500 block of St. Paul. Importantly, I live in the neighborhood. My wife and 2 small children, we live about 200 yards from the All In Motel. Our block is an eclectic block. Besides my family, there are other families with small children, long-term residents, and even tenants with leases. Since we moved to the neighborhood 5 years ago, we have been waiting for a transformational project to uplift the All In Motel from its obvious blight and disrepair to something that the whole neighborhood can be proud of and enjoy. For 5 years, an entire neighborhood has been waiting for this vote and for this project to move forward. As you know, the South City Park neighborhood has already voted in favor of this project twice, overwhelmingly. It's part of the materials that were submitted with you for approval. This vote took place after the developer submitted the project, submitted the concept to questioning and to scrutiny from the neighborhood, people who have a vested interest. He made himself available and took anyone up on a phone call who would call him. This project has numerous benefits. It will improve the safety of the neighborhood. It'll help remove a long-standing negative stigma of Colfax in the All In Motel. It'll retain the building's historic and unique character. And it'll also provide lodging for out-of-town guests. Importantly, this can't be lost, is that this developer is local. He's not seeking to plant a Best Western flag or a Marriott flag or some other cookie-cutter hotel that is not unique to this neighborhood. He's here, he's local. All the neighbors in my neighborhood who have a vested interest and who live there are strongly supportive of this project. We are the ones who have to deal with the project or with the status of it now, day to day, and we'll have to deal with it in the future. If there was ever a project for TIF, I'd ask you all, drive by, walk by, tell me that this project isn't blighted and isn't deserving of TIF. Because if not, I don't know why we have a TIF or urban renewal statute. It makes no sense. My family and my neighborhood, we strongly support this project. We urge you to vote unanimously in favor of this project that will move our neighborhood forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Anna Thompson on Zoom.
Can I be heard? Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
What? Hello, can I be heard?
We can hear you.
Good evening, council and all watching. Mariana Thompson. As a volunteer advocate of our unhoused neighbors, I am very familiar with All In. And I am speaking, like Jeff before me said, against the approval of 22-0590. In the last 3 years, numerous people have been temporarily housed at All In and have received housing. Jesse Paris and myself have advocated for 4 people, and 2 people out of those 4 that we advocated for had gotten housing. Now, I am very familiar what the inside looked like compared to the pictures. And I could say, if this is the owner and he would allow the tenants, our unhoused neighbors, to live in these deplorable conditions, no, we do not need a luxury hotel. The urban renewal is the old-fashioned name of gentrification. I do not believe in paying my taxpayer money towards this. And what about the unhoused people that got displaced, Consul? Do you understand that some of them are been displaced as far as Lakewood? When down the street, they had the bus line. Down the street was the 7-Eleven. This was a perfect place, just like the Fusion Studios a couple years ago that you guys approved of to be permanent housing. We need permanent housing from old motels. I am very upset with this. I live down the street on Park Avenue and Colfax, and these bids, Colfax bids, is just trying to make everything luxury, when right now we are all suffering. Even people right now in low income housing are, one step to the tent city. If you don't want tents in our city, Consul, I would appreciate if you all vote no on this, not just one person. Do the right thing. Remember, we can do better, so let's do better tonight. Thank you.
Terese Howard.
All right. Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, City Council, first for allowing me to voice my opinion. I appreciate the time, and my name is Terese Howard. I and my fiance Ellie purchased our home. We are 4 houses away from All In. We are extremely close. This is something we are passionate about, and we unanimously support the proposed renovations for All In Hotel. Brian Toerber purchased the All In Hotel with the intent to keep the classic landmark, improve the quality of the hotel, and to benefit local neighborhoods. Brian needs City Council approval to move forward with these hotel renovations. This project will add a hotel option for the region of Denver. Looking on Google Maps, you can see between the neighborhoods of Cole, Clayton, Park Hill, Whittier, Skyland, City Park, South City Park, Congress Park, Montclair, there are little to no hotels available. Given the amount of hospitals in the area, we would benefit from providing families and friends of patients staying at the hospitals with a place to stay when they visit their loved ones. This project will also improve the beauty of the neighborhood. This project includes keeping the existing structure, adding an additional structure to increase capacity, and improve the exterior of the buildings and remove this blight that we walk by every single day. This project will also add additional businesses along Colfax. As Brian mentioned, he intends to add small businesses, a coffee shop, a bakery. This brings, and this is Business 101, it'll bring in additional businesses. This will help increase the safety, and when we bring a child to our neighborhood, this will help us feel more safe in the area. In conclusion, we're all in for supporting Brian Toerber and the hotel renovation. I urge City Council to approve this project. Thank you again for your time and your support for this renovation.
Thank you. Our next speaker joining us virtually is Terese Howard.
Council, I'm Terese Howard with House Views Action Network Denver. I'm here to ask you all to vote against this bill, this proposed tax increment finance. I have known many people over the years that have stayed at the All In time of desperation without housing. And it has been one of the critical hotels that is accessible for folks who are needing that kind of an emergency housing situation. They have been more accessible in terms of, folks that don't have IDs, and the city, as well as other service providers, have utilized them a great deal for putting people in temporary hotel voucher situations. To get rid of this hotel and turn it into a luxury apartment is baffling to me, that we are actually considering using our tax dollars, public tax dollars, to destroy low-income emergency housing and turn it into luxury hotel. That is literally what we're talking about right now, in a time in Denver when we have the largest housing crisis ever, when housing is the biggest issue we're talking about, when we have hundreds and thousands of folks on the streets and shelters and so on and so forth every day. This is the biggest thing we're talking about. And meanwhile, it's before council to vote to turn one of the viable options we have into a luxury hotel. This is very disturbing. I think it's really important to note also that even if all of the current residents of this hotel are moved into a great housing situation, which is much needed, and very much hope that is something the city and partners can achieve in this time frame. Even if that were to be the case, that doesn't change the situation that this is a low income, a cheap, attainable, temporary housing option that is badly needed in our city, that would then be gone, would be off the table, would no longer be an option. We can't just be looking at the immediate situation. We have to be looking at the long haul. And the long haul we should be looking at is what is needed in this property. This property is needed to be retained as a quality property for low income folks. The city could have bought this property in 2016. It should buy it now and retain it for low income people. And I ask that the city vote no on this, and instead move to buying the all-in and turning it into low-income housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Kotas in chambers.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys tonight. I would like to start off by saying I come from a very large Italian family. We've made a lot of sausage in our days, and this is quite an impressive process. So thank you for what you guys do for the city, and thank you for your time. I'm hoping to win an award. I live 3 houses behind the all-in, and with my wife, Emily, and our 2 small children. I have a 5-year-old son and a 2.5-year-old little girl. We spend a lot of our time in the alley, riding bikes and teaching my son how to ride his bike, and watering the plants and the bushes in the alley. And this neighborhood is really important to us. I've lived in Denver since 1995, and we've lived in this current house for about 6 years. And this would mean a lot to us. I know from a macro level, there's been a lot of good data and information presented of how this aligns with the city East Development Plan, how this generates jobs, how this reduces blight. But I just kind of wanted to address the micro aspect of this, and the fact that it has overwhelming support from our South City Park neighborhood organization that we attend meetings regularly. This also has strong support from the Congress Park Neighborhood Association as well. And like I said before, for the people that live on that street and in the surrounding blocks, this is a big deal for us. We live with this every single day, and it will make this area a lot safer and a much welcome area to raise our children and enjoy the city and why we live in the city. So thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. Would you introduce yourself for the public record?
I apologize. My name is Jason Kotas.
All right, great.
I went too quick with the Italian joke. I apologize.
No, all good, all good. We appreciate it. Thank you. Our next speaker is joining us via Zoom, Brandy Majors.
Good evening. Sorry, everybody. I'm very, very sick right now. But I'll try to be brief. I apologize about the echo. I'm in the Black House, and They were too close to each other. That's what I want to say. This is like ridiculous. You know, I was unhoused. Terese got me in the all-in due to my heart condition and right in the beginning before COVID had hit and a winter storm. It served its purpose for what I needed it for. Mariana Thompson, Jesse Paris helped me receive housing after that due to some other nonsense that happened at the all-in. Like after I had kept my room for almost like 6-8 months, something like that. I can't remember. Then I received housing shortly after. Now, what I want to say about this is that when you say restoration means to me that you're going to fix the actual building, not tear it down and build a new building that is luxury, okay, for whatever new gentrification that you're going to bring into the community, okay? I don't care about the National Jewish Hospital, all that stuff. Everything's been rebuilt to suit one group of people. Gentrification is only for one class of people. I'm gonna say it again like I said it last week. This only suits white people. White people, LGBTQ people with high-paying jobs. That's what's there. That's what it supports. It does not support the Black community that used to live in that area. They used to go to East High School, used to be all around that area. It does not support them. You avidly keep, pushing our people out. And how you push our Black community out, you push our Hispanic community out. And you only bring in more high-paying, upper-class white people. That's what this was for. Now, if the building is messed up, you only have to blame the owner. If you're not bringing enough money to that area, blame yourselves, the city of Denver. When you decided to build I-70 and you took the tourism money from that area, then it became how it is. This is your fault, not the city, not the people that live in the city, but the actual city's fault when they decided to transform the city to suit financial needs. Make this building for what it is. Restore the building. Keep the homeless there. You do not have a place to put them. You know that.
Thank you. Our next speaker was Charles Nusbaum, but we're not seeing him online, so we'll go to Jesse Paris. Oh, hello, you're in person. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Council. I'm Charles Nusbaum. I live in the 1400 block of Detroit Street for the last 9 years. And before that, I was in the 1400 block of Clayton Street. So I've traveled Colfax between New York, Josephine, and Colorado Boulevard segment for 22 years now. And I really support all the people that are speaking against it. However, I beg you to support this proposal. It's a critical need for this catalyst of the redevelopment in this stretch. For years, we didn't have a rec center. Now we do. For years, we didn't have a walkable grocery store. Now we do. The national and local opioid crisis has caused a need for methadone clinics. We have 2. We need a hotel to serve the general surrounding neighborhoods in a way that is not being met. I do sympathize with the housing shortage, and I do support the efforts that have been made to relocate the people and the employees at this location. I've got a new East graduate, but during his years in high school, my son has seen drugs being thrown from the window when the police have been at the bottom of the hotel raiding activity there that shouldn't be happening on Colfax or anywhere. I don't think that we want to continue that activity. I don't think the surrounding neighbors deserve that. I think that overall positive redevelopment of this historic building is needed and appreciated, and the restaurant and the bakery and the space that's being offered for small business and artists, I think is important. I think there is no walkable hotel to East High for people that are attending events or productions there. I think National Jewish deserves to have a hotel within walking distance for visitors. I think that the neighbors need a hotel for guests to stay and be able to walk. I think people going to City Park Jazz need a place to stay if they want to stay and enjoy the community. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that you'll support this proposal.
Thank you so much. We'll go back online for Jesse Paris.
Yes, good evening, members of council and those watching at home. My name is Jesse LaShawn Paris, and I'm representing for Black Star Action Movement for Self-Defense, Positive Action Committee for Social Change, as well as the Unity Party of Colorado, the East Denver Residents Council, Frontline Black News, and I will be the next mayor of Denver in 2023. And I reside in District 8 in Christopher Herndon's district. I am definitely against this rezoning tonight. As previous speakers have already spoken, I am still currently a housing advocate. I have helped to house several people throughout the years. Some of them have actually spoken tonight. And the organization I was a part of, Denver Homeless Out Loud, has went out our way to house people that were experiencing homelessness at this location. One person in particular I used to advocate for, Preach, he has been housed for 2 years. Prior to this, he stayed at the All-In, and I can attest to the deterioration of the building because I witnessed it firsthand. People have almost got electrocuted to death in that building. The elevator was very unsafe. So the building is definitely in disrepair. I would like to be made into another Fusion Studios or something of the sort, because we have a housing crisis, and instead of turning it into luxury apartments like Terese Howard spoke earlier, we have a housing crisis in luxury apartments in this area of Denver is not a solution nor a means toward a solution to our housing crisis that we are under. This is just more gentrification as usual. Urban renewal is just short for get all the undesirables out. That's why they keep talking about crime and it's unsafe over here because they allowed this area to go into blighted conditions just so they could have a reason to tear it down and build luxury hotel, 81 room hotel that's not going to be for people that are currently experiencing homelessness. So I am definitely against this. Please vote no on this tonight so that you have a heart and a conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Our next speaker is Megan Whelan online.
My name is Megan Whelan. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm a resident of the Capitol Hill area, and I'm here on behalf of Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods, otherwise known as CHUN. I'm the chair of the Urban Planning Committee, and I'm just here to report on our R&O's position on this, and that on Thursday, October 28th, 2021, our board of directors held a regularly scheduled board meeting. And at that meeting, we discussed this project and had a presentation. 20 board members voted in favor of lending our support to this project as described. None opposed, and we had 2 board members that abstained. And without belaboring all of the points that you've heard, I know it's been a long evening, I'll just give a quick summary. The reasons are, number one, we do feel public-private partnerships are essential to Denver's future, and in particular with regard to this project. Number two, this investment group has appropriately engaged with us. They've demonstrated a commitment to working with the RNOs and community investments with neighborhood organization input is paramount, and we feel like we've been heard in terms of our concerns. Number three, our board believes in preserving historic properties throughout Chun's 10 neighborhoods. And the redevelopment of this property is consistent with our organizational goals to save older architecture. Number four, activating community spaces and bringing Denverites together is critical. That's part of our mission. This project will provide unique public spaces along the Colfax Avenue corridor, and the neighborhood serving amenities are to be recognized. And finally, innovative design and creating multiple uses in the South City Park neighborhood makes sense. Uses such as hotel accommodations, which we have heard a number of times, are in need. A cafe and a pool with some access to our neighborhood will be permitted in an area of the city requiring activation. In closing, I'd just say, you know, we've been promised a number of things over decades with regard to this property, and this feels like a partnership with DURA that we're very supportive of, and at the same time acknowledging all of the concerns as represented here. So thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker online is Jerry Burton.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. My name is Jerry Burton. I'm with Hinds, House Key Action Network Denver. I'm a veteran. This is what I do not understand with y'all. We have a housing crisis here. We came to house the unhoused neighbors that we already have, and those that are living in transition housing, and those that are living in shelters. But yet, you want to take taxpayer dollars to make a luxury apartment. Luxury apartment is this. If you're living in a tent, if you're living in a shelter, and you get an apartment, that's luxury. I don't know what y'all are thinking about, but it seems to me that y'all are perpetuating the homeless crisis for whatever reason. For whatever reason. And I know half of the city council is going to be running for other offices, or they no longer can run for these offices. But the point is, the city could have bought that building, and they could have tore it down, if it's not a historical monument or anything like that, and put low affordable housing on that property. Now, we got more luxury apartment than we know what to do with, but we still have homelessness in our city. I don't know what y'all doing, but it does not take a rocket scientist to make a rocket. But y'all have to understand that in order for people to have the stability, they must have a place first. And y'all forgetting that equation. And y'all need to really think about this, and I want you to vote no on this, because at the same time, we are going to have more unhoused neighbors living on the streets in the city and county of Denver. Think about it. Think about it. We just celebrate Juneteenth. And let me tell you something. It's the same BS that was going on in 1865 that is going on in 2022. Y'all don't care about people. Y'all have put more value in money and bringing businesses to this establishment, to the city, that y'all don't have a conscience. And with that being said, I'm gonna say this: vote no. Simple. Vote no, and let's buy the building and make it low income. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim J. And it looks like we don't have Jim J with us, and so we're going to go ahead and move on. V. Reeves.
Hello there. My name is V. Reeves. I'm calling to urge that the vote is a no on creating this property into a luxury hotel using taxpayer money. I'd like to focus on two terms that have been used and really think about what that means. One of them is blight. Unfortunately, people have talked about how this is a blight in the neighborhood, suggesting that it spoils or damages the neighborhood with its existence. It has been an asset to the community to, again, as people have mentioned before, support housing and support the trajectory that people have to take in order to get that stability to get permanent housing. I am also a former case manager and have myself used this hotel as a means for some of my clients to seek refuge. When you take this away, you take away another tool that case managers have to be able to offer temporary support and relief while we're searching for other options. And I can promise you that case managers are searching like crazy for beds and for, temporary protection from the elements while we try to find permanent housing. Unfortunately, we've seen from the Department of Housing Stability's own numbers that we're just not having any additional housing being built. What was happening since the year of 2015, there was no new market housing without government assistance that was being built below 60% AMI in Denver. Since 2015, that's 7 years. Through service providers, they have plans this year to build 523 housing units for under 30%, but there is a need of 32,000. When you have a viable option, a location that works, by the bus lines, by the service organizations, by the resources that people need. When you talk about another word, integrity, the very first speaker talked about preserving the integrity of the neighborhood. This is Colfax, and we are displacing people at alarming rates. We are forgetting the integrity definition originally, which is moral upstandingness. And here you are, choosing to displace further and continuing to ask yourselves why we have a housing crisis to begin with. So I urge the city instead reconsider purchasing this building and allowing it to remain a viable option for people as it has for so long, and do not continue to contribute to the displacement of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Clark.
Hello, good evening. My name is Emily Clark. I'm a Denver resident and I live on Monroe Street. I'm here today to express my strong support of the redevelopment plan for the All-In Hotel. I live in the South City Park neighborhood in which this property is located. I truly believe this plan will contribute many benefits to our community and is consistent with the East Central Area Plan. It will reduce blight, become a catalyst for other improvements, and provide services that are currently missing. It will create many jobs and provide an important piece of infrastructure to Colfax and the Bluebird District. all while preserving an historic structure. I was able to visit the Austin, Texas hotel managed by New Waterloo, the same company that will oversee this hotel. It was a beautiful building, well maintained, and included a thriving restaurant and retail store. If this hotel is to be anything like it, we'd be incredibly lucky. I would like to encourage City Council to approve the redevelopment plan as well as the associated funding mechanisms. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eleni Sarris.
Members of Denver City Council, my name is Eleni Sarris. I live in the Congress Park neighborhood. I'm requesting that you vote no on the tax increment financing proposition for 3015 East Colfax Avenue, which is operated as the All-In Motel. For the record, and to correct what a previous speaker said by the name of Jason, I believe, Congress Park neighborhood R&O has not provided support for this project. The current owner, Brian Toerber, wishes to build a boutique hotel. He has informed me and others that he has repeatedly been turned down for financing because the project was deemed too risky prior to the onset of the pandemic due to the lack of branding, his own lack of experience in managing a hotel, and the project's lack of a universal hotel reservation system, as well as the proliferation of short-term rentals. Once the developer realized that his dream of owning a boutique hotel in a changing dynamic of short-term rentals was problematic, he decided to defer all maintenance and have his property deemed as blight in order to secure tax increment financing. What is trouble is that the so-called blight is confined to his property only because of the lack of attention to make repairs that Mr. Toerber promised to take care of in 2016. Tax increment financing should not be used to assist a developer with a project that is otherwise not viable due to lack of business acumen, community need or benefit, or market demand. Within walking distance, there are many short-term rentals. I believe there are over 300, and there are also several inns and bed and breakfasts. The site currently accepts temporary housing vouchers from the City and County of Denver, Denver Police Department, and Mental Health Center of Denver. How do I know this? Because I work with a group of volunteers and service providers who have referred displaced neighbors to the All-In Motel. Once the tax increment financing proposal was initiated, the management at the hotel notified residents of their impending evictions. Your vote to affirm the TIF will result in dozens of vulnerable people being displaced. I toured the property recently this month and talked to several people who have been told that they must move no later than July 1st. They have no place to move to and no housing has been identified for them. They state that there was one initial contact about moving from the All-In Motel, and that is all they have heard since that time. I gave these residents my personal email address so that I can follow up with them to get them assistance. The state of the facility on the inside and outside has not been maintained and the conditions are absolutely deplorable. However, Mr. Toerber's management company continues to collect rent from residents living there. I made notice of several Denver code violations of the property that are present today. There are very few motels that accept housing vouchers and even fewer places that accept tenants without identification whose documents may have been lost in a move, displacement, or sweep. The loss of such a hotel that accepts vouchers from our city will immediately and
We're
swiftly
going to go ahead and move on. That was the time we have allotted for each speaker. Our next speaker is Kathy Price.
Hello. My name is Kathy Price. I live on Monroe Street as well. I am a resident of South City Park, but I'm here to represent and speak on behalf of South City Park Neighborhood Association, for which I am the current treasurer. I just wanted to address the members of council to say that I am here on behalf of South City Park Neighborhood Association in support of the redevelopment of the All-In Motel property as proposed by Inspire Investment Group. We being the neighborhood association, have performed several surveys of our membership, once in 2019 and again recently in March of 2022. And those survey results have shown overwhelming results in support from our neighbors, from our members of this redevelopment. In 2019, the membership voted at 95%. I do not have the number that voted at that time, but 95% of members voted in support. In March of 2022, after Brian and Inspire Investment Group came to the South City Park Neighborhood Association meeting to address proposed changes, provide a presentation along with DURA in March 2022, we sent out the second survey. That survey was open from March 28th through April 10th, so significant period of time to obtain the opinions of our members. And the results of that showed 88% of the current membership remain in favor of this project. So with that being said, again, just showing the support on behalf of the RNO that the neighborhood, or excuse me, that the hotel sits within. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie Blakey.
Hello, council members. My name is Katie Blakey. I'm also a member of Chun, and I live in District 10. I signed up to speak to ask that you please vote no on this bill. I don't think it's appropriate to use tax increment financing for this project, which provides limited community benefit. The owner purchased the property in foreclosure, understanding how much work the building needed, and has allowed the property to fall into further disrepair in the 6 years they've owned it. This type of funding mechanism should be reserved for special projects that will deliver a significant benefit to the community. According to a report from the American Hotel and Lodging Association, Denver hotel occupancy rates year to date are averaging about 58%, which is well behind the 74.8% occupancy rates of 2019. Boutique hotels in particular are a risky business venture. Restaurants, cafes, and even pools are facing significant staffing shortages. In light of this, it's inappropriate for the city to take on this additional risk when we're facing increasing costs, inflation, and record levels of homelessness and displacement. Also, in listening to the presentation, it sounds like this project will take money away from Denver Public Schools from the DPS mill levy. If y'all could, please clarify what exactly that all means. Like many others who've spoken, I'm concerned about the people who are being displaced from the hotel and wish we lived in the kind of city where that consideration carried a real weight. Thank you for your time, and please vote no on 22-0589 and 22-0590.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Johnston.
Yes, good evening, City Council. Thank you so much for this time. I am asking you to vote yes, and I'm testifying in support of the DURA proposal for 3015 East Colfax. I also live with my wife, young children on the 1400 block of Milwaukee Street, so just across the street from this property. We need to be taking plywood down from Colfax's windows, not putting more up. The request being put forth by DURA will help accelerate the Greektown Business District out of the stagnation that COVID created and anchor it for many years to come. As has been mentioned, the hotels that this will be modeled after have been extremely successful, whether it's in Austin, Washington, D.C. In my discussion with what local businesses still are present, at least in the Greektown Business District, from like Steele down to York, the excitement and possibilities this project creates are obvious. I won't belabor the points with regards to hospital support, local resident support, commercial space that has been mentioned, and how the growth will help support the tax base for our city. This has been in its state for decades. This is not Brian's doing that it is in this current state. And I think his proposal has been the only one for a very, very long time that will actually bring back some activation to the Greektown Business District in this area of Colfax. I know that it's being used for a small number of housing vouchers, but I think we shouldn't withhold future municipal support from a business just because they participate in the voucher program. That seems more like a punishment to me. I think voting no will actually disincentivize future voucher enrollment and resources. And as has been presented, there's been extensive work to that no one will be displaced. It's also been said that the planning board, though coming forth with no recommendation, was merely because there weren't enough people present to show what was overall a supportive vote in favor. So yeah, please vote yes to help this area of Colfax. Vote yes for your constituents who want to see Colfax thrive, and don't let this property remain in its blighted state for decades to come. Without your support, this is sure to happen. Thank you so much for your time and for your service. Appreciate you.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers. Questions from members of council on Council Bill 22-589? Councilmember Sawyer.
Thanks, Madam President. Tracy, one of the speakers did bring up a great question that I think is important to clarify for everyone, and that is exactly kind of what tax increment financing does in relation to the 3 taxing entities in the city and county of Denver.
So if I may, Councilwoman, I'd like to both answer that question and maybe give an little bit of additional context to maybe clarify some other components as well.
Thanks.
So tax increment financing is a mechanism by which only newly created revenues as a result of the redevelopment are made available to DURA to help reimburse costs that the developer is incurring. So when the other taxing entities evaluate the project, they have to first decide, is the project going to occur? And if so, what would those new revenues be that, again, but for this project wouldn't be there? And then more importantly, what does the project itself do as far as impact their delivery services? So taking Denver Public Schools, this is proposed to be a hotel project, so therefore there are not new residents that are coming into the school district system that they would need to assist. And so very, very frequently when it is a commercial-only project, that is the viewpoint of DPS. Conversely, when it is a project that has a significant amount of residential or just any residential, they look at that evaluation differently. When it comes to urban drainage, this is part of an existing network of utilities that they participate in, and so they also agreed that given the size and scale of this project, it was not going to have an impact. I want to circle back to, again, those revenues and the structure that we are pursuing, which is that the developer has to finance all of the project. He only stands to benefit if the project is successful and therefore actually generates an increase in property taxes as well as sales taxes. So there is no risk to the city. This is only capturing those taxes that are generated within the boundaries of the urban renewal area. So it would be any sales tax generated by the project as well as property tax above what is currently being generated. I hope that helps.
Yep, really appreciate that explanation. Thank you so much for that. And just don't go anywhere yet. One more quick question. Just wanted to also clarify, a number of the speakers had said, had felt very strongly that they did not want this to be an apartment building. It is going to be a hotel. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is going to be a hotel.
Okay, not an apartment building.
Yeah.
Okay. And historically, up until the time when the current owners offered it to the city to use as temporary housing for residents who were at risk to COVID, is that correct? Or just temporary housing in general?
I may have to defer to the owner on that question, in that it is my understanding that there are no city vouchers currently being deployed at the motel.
Oh, great. Okay, that clarifies that for me then. Is that correct? Do you want to come up and respond to that?
Please introduce yourself for the public record.
Yes, thank you. Brian Toerber, the representative owner of the property. I believe I heard the question was the motel offered as temporary housing during the pandemic? The answer is yes. I did reach out to, at the time it was marketed by Denver to say we need some housing help here. I reached out to, I think it was Nest or Host, and offered the apartment because we had plenty of rooms available. We interchanged with a couple emails and they declined respectfully that it just didn't check enough of their boxes.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Really appreciate that clarification. So what happens if we agree and vote to create this urban renewal area, we agree to allow the TIF financing, and the project fails? What happens? I hope it doesn't, for your sake, but what then?
This may need to be a tag team answer, and I will give the Urban Renewal Authority answer, and then Brian, put you on the spot as far as what your answer may be. The risk is borne by the developer. So again, in putting together this project, he has already put significant amount of equity into the project and is securing loans that will be serviced in part through the performance of the project just from normal cash flow, as well as then by the amount of incremental taxes that the project generates. If the amount of TIF is not, that was expected to be generated isn't there just needs to be additional resources brought forward by the developer to continue to repay the obligation and or take a reduction in the amount of equity returns that they would otherwise be seeking to achieve.
Okay, great. I hope that doesn't happen for your sake if this ends up being approved. But I really wanted to kind of know, what is the city's risk? What are we looking at in terms of, if we agree to this, then what comes next? So really appreciate that explanation. I think that's it for me. Thanks, Madam President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Sawyer. Council Pro Tem Torres.
Thank you, Madam President. A lot of people asked why the city didn't purchase this. Was it offered up? Was there any interest? Was that a play at hand at all?
So that's a good question. In December of 2015, this property, as well as the other property that was in bankruptcy, went to auction, public auction. I wasn't a participant at that time. We weren't in a situation to pursue it. The stalking horse bidder, they call it, would have been awarded the project. There were no competing bids to purchase it. He was the only one at that time that had even advanced an offer. Because there wasn't a competing bid, the judge of the court said, well, in exchange for allowing you the 10% discount because nobody bid against you, we have to take it back out to public market. I was at that case hearing, and when that happened, I decided, well, maybe now that it's going to be re-offered at a future auction, that maybe at that point I would be interested to make an offer for it. April of 2016, 4 months later, that auction was conducted. There were 4 individuals or representatives at that particular auction. One was the stalking horse bidder. One was an individual behind me. I don't know what the intent was. There was a third that declined to bid, and I was the 4th. I believe all of them were individual developer representatives that had an interest in it. I haven't met anybody that was a representative of the city that had any intent to buy.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council Pro Tem Torres. Councilmember Hinds.
Thank you, Council President. So this is also a question or I have a few questions for Mr. Toerber. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but hopefully we can figure this out, my being virtual and you in person. I want to read a quote from Congress Park resident Vicki Epler. Brian Toerber and his partners have invested considerable time and money in an effort to create a project that would fit the context of Colfax and add community benefits. This is not a luxury motel. This is not a chain hotel, but a local business. So that's the end of the quote. We certainly heard in public comment from multiple people who say that this will be a luxury motel. Help me understand if the people in public comment are right, or and this letter, by the way, is in Granicus, so this isn't it's publicly available for anyone to read it. But help me understand either why this is a luxury motel, or why Ms. Epler believes it is not a luxury motel, but just a local business.
Somewhere the narrative got put forth that this was a luxury hotel development. I'm not quite sure where that came from. It didn't come from anybody that I represent. This hotel is designed and has been designed to be kind of the community in which it rests. It's probably going to sit somewhere squarely in a 3-star. It's designed to be an affordable housing or affordable accommodation. It's not something you would see down in Cherry Creek. It's independently owned, independently branded hotel. And luxury, I guess, means different things to different people. I guess because it's cleaned up, maybe somebody thought it was luxury. But we're looking to fit within the fabric of the community and of Colfax. And I think that the business and the brand that we've designed is just that. If you're familiar with other types of boutique hotels that are small in nature, they're just hotels that kind of speak of the local culture. And that's kind of how we designed it and branded it. So it's not a luxury hotel. It's really kind of just a understated place where people can kind of come, enjoy time, kind of work and relax and have fun.
Thank you for that. In the same letter, Ms. Epler mentions that she's on the board of Congress Park Neighbors, but that she is writing specifically on her own behalf, not on the board of CPN. I know that you've given multiple presentations to Congress Park Neighbors. Could you tell me a little bit about your the presentation and the expectations that the board of Congress Park Neighbors had for you? Did they share that they were intending to take a position, or were they inviting you to present so that CPN attendees could be better informed? Or help me understand what CPN's expectations of you were and your expectations as a result of your presentation.
So my recollection is two conversations. The first conversation was just with the board members. I gave them a personal tour. Vicki was part of that personal tour. I remember there were 5 or 6 individuals. I remember they were all board members, and I toured the property with them and explained what we were doing, and it was support. It was, we like it. The reason why it wasn't in front of the neighborhood is because we didn't have a meeting that I could fit on their agenda back then, and we were getting ready back in 2000. And I don't know if the year was 2019 or 2020, but we were getting ready to move forward then. And then the pandemic hit and everything just kind of shut down. We then, with Jeff, with DURA and myself, formally met with a Congress Park Neighborhood Association where the neighbors are, and they had support of our project. I mean, it wasn't 100% support. Nothing ever really is, but we left that meeting. I think we felt very confident that we had support. So that was with regard to Congress Park.
Yeah, and I guess the nature of my question is, I don't recall Congress Park Neighbors taking official positions on a lot of rezonings, or in this case, a DURA presentation. And so, but I figured I would ask you specifically what your conversations were, in case CPN had mentioned that it did intend to take a position as a result of the conversation with you.
An official position on it. Explaining our plans, and we took question and comment.
Okay, so I have one other kind of thought process I want to go down. Tell me about the pool you intend to build there. Who gets to visit the pool, and what are your community goals for the pool?
Yeah, great question. We are trying to model a successful offering that New Waterloo has had at some of their other hotels in Austin, where they have pools that are available for the community for day pass. So we felt that this was an opportunity to kind of activate that ground level. We couldn't put the pool up top for cost concerns, but we wanted to activate it. So we thought that it would be a nice benefit for those that would like to take an afternoon and sit around a pool and relax. that this would be a offering, an amenity for the community, that they could indeed come and use the pool in addition to the hotel guests via daily passes. It's been done at New Waterloo's other hotels successfully, South Congress Park, as well as El Rey, I know for sure, and I'm sure they've got others that they do it at. So we're pretty excited about that. I think that there's some community pools that I'm aware of, but I think this pool will just be more of an activated opportunity to come and just relax and hang out and have fun.
Yeah, thank you for that. The last question that I have is very similar. I think you mentioned it in your testimony. You talked about the community space, but I'd like for you to go into a little more detail about there's a community space that you intend to build there, and what are your goals for that community space? Who do you intend to offer it to, et cetera?
So through our discussions with Community Planning and Development and Denver Urban Renewal, we felt it very important to offer additional community benefits in addition to the preservation of historic structure. This was important for Community Planning and Development, and we hadn't had space allocated within the ground level that we could offer, but during those conversations, I identified an area that was actually going to be the laundry facility for the hotel and said, perhaps this particular space we'll reimagine. We'll get rid of it, or we'll move it, we'll do it off-site, or we'll move it to the basement. So Community Planning and Development actually really appreciated the negotiation between that, and it was understood, if you do this, this needs to be a commercially affordable space. So I sat down actually with Bluebird Bid and some other stakeholders, and I said, what would be something that's missing? People in the arts were brought up, that this would be great for those people that are part of the arts group. There were a couple specific art-related businesses or nonprofits that I actually reached out to and tried to dialogue what would work within a hotel that would be a benefit to both, that would be a use that would make sense, but would really be something that a small business or somebody that was looking at displacement of their business could come in and take as a tenant. And we would offer that to them as an affordable commercial space. So we have about 695 square feet on that ground level. We re-engineered some access, ADA access to that space. We sent our architect back to the drawing board to redesign it, and we went back into planning with the city to get that re-looked at and permitted. So we feel really good about it. We know there's a lot of companies that are at risk of displacement. We're just hoping to do a small part.
Thank you for your answers, and thank you, Council President. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Hinds. Councilmember Black.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a few questions probably for both of you. Tracy, I'll start with you. I know you answered a lot of questions about what tax increment financing is for Councilwoman Sawyer. I just wanted to clarify for some of the people who spoke. Several people stated that we were somehow taking money away from the city, or taking money away from our ability to help people, or taking money away from housing. So can you maybe re-clarify that so people understand again that this is the incremental benefit and we're not actually taking our city tax dollars?
Correct. Sure. I'm happy to do that. When an urban renewal plan is approved that includes tax increment financing, the state law requires that there be a calculation of the amount of taxes that the project is currently generating, both on sales tax as well as property tax, referred to very simply as the base amount of taxes. That amount is always first collected and then paid to the city or DPS or urban drainage. So in doing a project, it isn't taking anything away from the city or the other taxing entities from what they already were receiving. It's only the amounts above that base that become the increment that are available to the Urban Renewal Authority to invest in the project.
Okay, and that that will also expire. It doesn't go on indefinitely.
Correct. And the term of that would be the earlier of repayment of the amount that we commit to reimburse the redeveloper, or 25 years, whichever comes first.
Okay. And I know, I think it was last year that we had a number of them expire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some big ones. Okay. I had a question about the planning board vote. And so only 5 members were present out of 11.
Correct.
Okay. And 4 were in support and 1 was not, but they needed 5 votes because that would have been quorum?
Yes, they, as I am reading their bylaws, and I'm going to look for others who may have to weigh in here, that the requirement for approval of any item come before them is either a majority of those present or 5. And so since there were only 5 present, the majority clearly was met, but they needed to get that baseline of 5, which is the majority of the total count of the board.
Okay.
Did I do that right, Andrew?
So it's not the planning board voted it down, it's just literally there weren't enough people there.
Correct. The outcome was such that they could not make a recommendation.
Okay. And then I have a few other questions. I'm just trying to better understand what a lot of our speakers talked about, that we were taking housing away from people. So I just wanted to better understand what that housing is. And I know in our your presentation at Finance and Governments, you talked about the rent that people were paying and the number of days who were there. So I don't know if you want to answer that, or Mr. Toerber, but how many rooms are there at the All-In Motel?
There are 54.
Okay. And how many people are living there now?
As of today, or on
Today.
average? Today, I believe there are somewhere between 5 and 7. Lachelle may have the actual number. She's here tonight.
Okay. And before you stopped accepting new people in March, what was the typical occupancy?
So typically, there was, according to my tenant that has been managing it for 19 years, around mid-20s. And that's what we were expecting, about 24 people, because we had asked for a rent roll several months before, and that was also on the rent roll. In March, there were 37, so there was a surprise increase over what we were expecting, which wasn't consistent with the history of it, but I would assume, I believe that there was another site that closed down voluntarily, and they moved in here temporarily.
So you weren't normally full. You didn't have those rooms rented.
Correct.
Okay. And I saw a chart somewhere about how much people were paying, and it was, wait, tell me, how much, like a monthly?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were saying they're long-term.
Correct.
And so how much were they paying?
I believe, and another great question for Lachelle, I believe that the individuals were paying the motel tenant an average of $350 or $380 a week. We don't collect any rent. A couple things that I'll share is when we purchased it, we kept my rent to the operating company the same that was negotiated by the bankruptcy estate, and I haven't raised it in 6 years because I thought raising it would only put more burden on their business that would eventually potentially lead to their closing of that business. So it was important for me to say, we won't raise the rent in 6 years, and you're well below market rent to me. Now, their business was their business, and they worked with Mental Health Center of Denver and others to collect rents for the people that were being placed there. Now, from what I understand, even the rents they were collecting were below market. And I think that comes from Lachelle. I think maybe you could add some color around that.
Sure. Good evening, City Council members. Lachelle Coffey, Relocation Coordinator for the All-In Motel. To answer your first question, Council Member Black, there are 8 occupants remaining on site as of, I would say, 5 p.m. today. So And I believe one of those is an on-site employee that works for the All-In Motel. On average, the occupants are paying anywhere from $330 to $380 per week. And those rents are calculated and collected on a weekly basis. I can't recall the last question, if you don't mind repeating that.
Well, I have more questions for
Sure.
you. So, do the rooms have kitchens?
They do not.
Okay, so the rent is maybe around $1,400 a month.
Ranging anywhere from $1,320 per month to $1,400 per month.
Okay,
That is correct.
and just for some context, so let's just say it's $1,300 a month. That I just Googled average rent in Denver, and is about $1,700, and that's average. And those include kitchens. So I would not say that the All-In Motel is a bargain. And there's probably, some better places for people could live. So I'm just trying to put this in context, and you're telling me that typically there's only around 25 rooms that are occupied. But I did have another question for you. So the people who you've been helping, so thank you for doing that, it's my understanding that they are being helped or they're declining your assistance. Is that the case, or is there some other situations?
So no, we have not received any declines of our
Okay.
assistance. It's been welcomed, the
Okay.
assistance that we've provided. We've also been, since March 21st, when we issued our general information notices to the occupants, we've maintained on-site hours in room 215, not suite 215. Room 215, Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. until 5:00 p.m.
Okay.
And then that effective the first week of June, as the occupancy started to decline, we've been there maybe 2 to 3 days out of the week. So we've made our presence known with the occupants that are there on site, as well as working alongside of the management team that works for the All-In Motel.
Okay, and the 8 that you have left, are you confident you're going to be able to help
I would say
them?
of the 8 we have left, we have 4 that have applications that are pending, and then probably 4 that we're still trying to complete some sort of assessment to determine their financial means, as well as housing criteria that need to be met. So, and we'll continue on site there until we've met with everyone in attempts to relocate them all successfully.
Great, thank you. Mr. Toerber, I have a question for you. If this does not pass tonight, what would you do with the property? Would you continue using it as it is being used today?
No, the motel's closing. It's just the deferred maintenance. We've just kind of tried to keep it together for as long as we can. We invested in a new elevator so that it wouldn't have to close. We adhered to all the public health criteria for demand to cure and to fix, just so we could keep it open and keep it used as housing. But the motel operator just can't make any money anymore. So they asked to move on, and they're managing a site down the street for us as well. So that's where they want to move to and focus on that. And this project just became too expensive for them to keep it going. So if this didn't pass, we would have a boarded up, closed building that we would literally have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Black. Councilmember Kashmann.
Thank you, Mr. Toerber. Just so I'd be sure I understand, the plan is to renovate the existing building and build a second.
That's correct.
On the site. So what, 57 did you say in the old building?
54 in the old building.
Okay, and then
27 in the new.
Okay. Now, the current situation, you're renting it simply to individuals, or are there agreements with agencies that these individuals are being referred by? How does your... Would you like to phone a friend?
Yeah, can I call a friend? She has more information on
Yes, sir.
the conversations.
Thank you.
Again, Lachelle Coffey, relocation coordinator. So the rooms they were being rented to individuals that were, some were employed, some receiving some government assistance like Social Security benefits, and the only agency that was receiving or placing occupants at the All-In Motel was the Mental Health Center of Denver. And they were paying with something that we refer to as a voucher, but it was a weekly payment slip that they had an arrangement with the management in place at the All-In Motel.
And so what percentage of your people would you say came through MHCD?
We had a total of 5 occupants from MHCD as of March 21st.
Thank you. And then, thank you, Michelle. Mr. Toerber again. So, it sounds like the building is not in great shape.
Yeah.
And so, have you own it 6 years? Is that what I remember?
6 years.
Okay. Give me an idea of how much money you've put in. I mean, have you made any attempts to repair?
Yeah. Yeah, so I personally invested $75,000 on a new elevator. The Kims, their lease agreement is a triple net lease, so they're responsible for 100% of the maintenance. It's pure triple net. When in 2019, when we had a visit from the fire department and public health department, I immediately went to them and said, you have an obligation to correct these items. So they invested their own dollars. I was informed that they invested over $100,000 to do all that, but I didn't check any of their invoices. So they did all the maintenance required by the various agencies that wanted things corrected at their expense. So collectively, I am assuming my 75 plus whatever they've invested just to keep it open, somewhere in the neighborhood of $175,000.
Not a lot of dough, really, for that type of property. I mean, if you want to write me a check for 175, I'll take it. But in the scope of what it sounds like, it doesn't sound like a huge effort was made to bring things up to a higher standard.
I think from our perspective, we knew that we only have a finite amount of money. And we wanted to, after talking with the neighborhood, deliver on the promise that they had always wanted, which was a renovation of a hotel. Any dollars that would go towards fixing rooms, there was so many systems that would have to be redone. All the electricity would have to be rewired, and the plumbing. It became apparent that it wouldn't be a good use of dollars to try to do all that work when the intent really is to reposition it. It's something that's more of a contributing business to the community. So although we invested a lot, it would take a significant amount of money to bring that up to a level that I would feel comfortable anybody using as permanent housing.
But you or the lessee met requirements presented by the city?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Thank you, sir. That's all I've got, Madam President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Kashmann. Councilmember CdeBaca.
Thank you. Brian, can you help me clarify a couple of things? First of all, what was and is Sage Hospitality's involvement in this project?
They didn't have any involvement. They were introduced to me when I purchased it within about a week or two of my purchase to discuss their feeling about a hotel renovation here and whether or not it was a viable project to do such, because they're a large hospitality management company in Denver. So I sat down with their executives and discussed it. They do have a relationship and know National Jewish very well, and kind of indicated to me that National Jewish would keep it full, that there was a need for that. So their interest and their involvement was a brief 2 or 3 conversations, but at the end of the day, they elected not to pursue any additional conversation with me to have them manage a future hotel because it didn't check enough of their strategic boxes.
And help me understand, you've said a couple of times that the hotel was the community's idea after visioning processes, but this conversation happened 2 weeks after your purchase, if not within a shorter period of time after your purchase. And you and I had a conversation when I first got in office about where this idea came from. Can you clarify where this hotel idea came from?
The way I understand it, before I owned it, the previous owner had discussed with the community his intent to renovate this into a hotel. And that plan didn't move forward. So when I came on board, those discussions had already occurred. I sat down with a formal councilman, and he indicated to me that the community was desired it, that it would be a good benefit and they would love it, and it would be a benefit for National Jewish as well. So I kind of was informed at that time. That was the first I had ever heard that a hotel development was kind of previous conversation with those people that were involved in it. I didn't have any hotel experience. It wasn't what I had planned to do here. Wasn't comfortable with a hotel, but as a commitment to him and the city, I felt obligated to investigate it and have conversations and see if it was viable. And it sent me down a 3-year rabbit hole of a lot of self-reflect and risk and conversation. And that's when the community engagement really started in earnest on my behalf, because I was a multifamily and multifamily developer. So that was my intent. That was not.
But it sounds like the risk has been primarily absorbed by the Kim family, correct?
Well, the risk of operating would be borne by the Kims with regard to liability risk of the hotel as is. The risk of the asset in the event that they can't maintain their business would certainly be borne by me, because then I would be in a situation, I'd have a vacant building and, you know, trying to figure out what next. So yeah, we share different risk.
You get the TIF funding and the project doesn't meet your needs as far as what it needs to generate in profit. What is the potential that you will sell to Sage Hospitality?
I don't have any relationship with Sage. I would say the potential would be zero. If I were to sell it, it would be something that I would want to sell it to a partner, New Waterloo. I wouldn't be working with Sage. I don't have a relationship with Sage.
And what is the likelihood that if the boutique hotel traditional format doesn't work, that you would turn it into an extended stay hotel? We're seeing those pop up. Sage Hotel, Sage has one of them in my district that originally started out as a boutique hotel and then turned to extended stay. What's the potential or likelihood that that would happen in this project? And does any of the agreement for TIF funding prohibit it from happening?
Can't speak to the TIF, but I could speak to the what if scenario if our plan doesn't work. In a situation where that were to happen, we'd be probably talking about a default situation with the lender, and that default would, the lender would cure the default by foreclosure, and I would assume they would take the asset and auction it to the highest bidder. And they would move in at pennies on the dollar and probably keep the same plan in place. That would be what I would assume would happen.
And so when we were asking for clarity earlier about luxury hotel versus market hotel, market rate, I didn't hear prices and sizes of rooms. Can you kind of give us an idea of how big the rooms are going to be and what you're going to be charging for nightly stays at this hotel?
54 of the rooms are 265 square feet and 27 are 335 square feet. Those are the ones in the new building. Those are all double queens. In the existing building, those are all single kings. Those are in the neighborhood of 265 square feet. The appraisal of ADR expectation, which stands for average daily rate, came in at about $181 a night on average.
And what was the current average daily rate?
So the average daily rate is a hospitality term for the average that somebody would pay throughout a year. Some nights it might be higher than 181, some nights it might be lower than 181. It's seasonal, and the average for the first year of operations in this appraisal that we had conducted was $181.
No, I'm actually asking for the current hotel, motel. What is the current average daily rate?
That I do not know, since I do not manage it, but I will ask Michelle and see if she has that information.
So based on our assessments with the occupants, they were not paying a daily rate, rather they were paying a weekly rate. And those weekly rates range from $320 per week to $400 per week.
So that would be about $45, $46 a night versus $181 a night. Okay, that's it for my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember CdeBaca. The public hearing is closed. Comments by members of council on Council Bill 22-589. Councilmember CdeBaca.
Thank you. We've heard a really divided set of community members, almost evenly split down the middle on this project. And we've heard everything from assumptions that people living in poverty get some kind of deal when they're in hotels, when in fact, it is often the most impoverished people who end up paying a premium on things that we take for granted, because it is cheaper to be in a hotel or a motel when you are unable to meet all of the requirements for a lease, when you are unable to show proof of employment. All of those things that typically are required when you engage in a lease are not required in these weekly, monthly, daily situations of motels and hotels. We've heard confusion about what TIF financing is or is not, whether there's a loss in the future or a loss currently. But what I think this all boils down to is that when we allow someone to use a public financing tool, there should be significant public gain. A pool with a daily pass for some people, 600 square feet or so of a community space without a current rate on what that space will cost or who will be in it. A rate jump from approximately $45 a night to $181 a night. It doesn't sound like there's a substantial community benefit at a time like the one we're experiencing. This is about a public financing mechanism being used for private profit. Yes, public-private partnerships are always very useful when we're trying to do things like create affordable housing. This is not one of those instances. This is an instance where someone bought a piece of land, significantly discounted. They did not invest very much. They passed on the burden of ownership to a small business operator who we should be thanking, who did commendable work to house the most vulnerable amongst us while keeping their business alive and investing in someone else's asset. Yet they get nothing from this situation. Those are the people who we should have been figuring out how to create a TIF financing scheme for. But that's not the case here. And we will be creating a public financing mechanism to benefit someone personally, their bottom line, not our community. It would be great to have a pool. It would be great to have a boutique hotel in the neighborhood, but not on the taxpayer dime, whether it's current taxpayer dollars or future foregone taxpayer dollars. So tonight I will be a no on this. I don't think it's ready. I think there are still residents who are not housed. We talked about this in committee. And I hope that my colleagues who were concerned about those residents getting housed stick to their guns and their commitment from committee. So I will be a no on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember CdeBaca. Councilmember Black.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate Councilwoman CdeBaca's comments just now and those of our speakers. And I do understand the need for motels. I know that for a lot of our most at-risk and residents who have the greatest needs, it's very difficult to lease a traditional apartment. And so I do understand that, and I know we've lost a lot of those properties in our city and along Colfax. I also understand the people who live in the area and why they would like to see some improvement in the area. I do think it's interesting that how much people pay to live in motels, and we all know that they're not usually places where a lot of us would want to live, and they're paying quite a lot of money. There are apartments in Denver. There's a lot in my district that cost a lot less than the all-in motel. And Ms. Coffey, you probably know about some of them in far southeast Denver. And so hopefully you can get every single one of those people into a better living situation where they have a kitchen also. So of course that is a goal of everyone here. We all want that to happen. This is an interesting example of the city trying to balance multiple goals. Housing, the desires of the neighborhood safety, community building, addressing blight. But one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that they're preserving an existing building. And so on different nights, you might sit here until 11 o'clock at night, and we're talking about preserving buildings, either designate them as a landmark or reusing buildings in another way. And it's something that we all think is very, very important not to tear a building down, because in a lot of instances in Denver, buildings have been torn down, and there's some regret for our community because we've torn down buildings we wish we hadn't torn down. So I appreciate the fact that you're going to reuse the existing building. It's good for our environment. It's bad for our climate to tear down a building and send it to the landfill. So I think that's something that's very different about this project than we usually see. Adaptive reuse is challenging and expensive, and I consider this as sort of an incentive to reuse the building. I know in a lot of cases it's cheaper for a developer just to tear down and build a massive apartment building. I know we've seen that all over the city, including in my district. So I just wanted to bring up that added benefit that I think is very important, is the fact that the building would be reused. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Black. Councilmember Hinds.
Thank you, Council President. As many of you know, I lived at 19th Logan in the Uptown neighborhood for 13 years. I would regularly go to City Park or through the City Park neighborhoods and along Colfax as I walk my dog between Uptown and City Park. So I visited this motel and would go by it a lot, and also went to the Associated Rock Bar years ago when the bar was still open. It was interesting, even back then. Still, it's great to see this motel up for consideration today. Considering I visited this specific location many times in previous years before I even considered serving in public office. It really helps me to get some additional context with which to consider the future of 3015 East Colfax. I do want to point out that this is in District 9. However, as of July 2023, when redistricting is complete, this plot will be located in District 10. I think it's also relevant or interesting to note that the District 9 sponsored map A, even though it wasn't adopted, would also have placed this location into District 10. So I want to thank the neighbors and multiple RNOs for their support for this project, including South City Park neighbors, Capitol Hill United neighbors, and multiple board members at Congress Park neighbors. As I mentioned in the questions, often Congress Park neighbors doesn't take positions. So I think that's part of the reason why Ms. Epler was specific about how she did not, her letter was not meant to be representative of CPN, but more on her personal behalf. And I also want to recognize and celebrate the letter of support from Historic Denver too. So some constituents have reached out to express concern about why this would be a hotel and not affordable housing. After all, that was the original plan for this location, as Mr. Toerber had mentioned, and it was because of the District 9 council member at the time that this project's focus changed from apartments to hotel rooms. With that new direction, the owner moved forward with hotel rooms. We're in an affordable housing crisis in our mile-high income city, that is for sure. The vast majority of new projects in District 10 are apartments. In Golden Triangle, 14 of the 15 projects currently on the CPD radar are apartments. In Cherry Creek, there's a similar picture of the 11 developments currently on the radar in Cherry Creek. In many ways, this is definitely in line with the priorities we've heard about and guidance council has given to developers, as in more apartments, please. We need them because of the housing crisis. But even though we have a housing crisis, it doesn't mean we must devote all resources to housing. It's okay that this project intends to add hotel rooms, particularly because of my next point. This project intends to add multiple amenities designed for the community. Known as the third place, City Park West is in need of a third place where neighbors can meet one another in a public space. I want to thank Mr. Toerber and the project sponsors for listening to the community and prioritizing meeting spaces for the community in their project. This hotel is close to National Jewish, as has been mentioned. And in case people don't already know, Perfect 10, because it's in my district, and Denver's own National Jewish is the nation's leading respiratory hospital. People come from all over the US for appointments at National Jewish, and loved ones deserve a nearby place to stay when they've come from other states or even countries. I think it's great that our public oversight that will release public tax dollars will create public gathering places on this project. Put another way, we're putting money from the people to work to create community gathering spaces for the people. There are comments showing concerns about the success or lack thereof for boutique hotels or potentially for this hotel. I just mentioned that council shouldn't vote based on an opinion of the business plan's viability. That's not our business. That is totally for, in this case, Mr. Toerber's success or lack thereof, and it's not really up to us to weigh in on whether we think that business model will be successful. But I would just mention that there is another boutique hotel on 11th and Capitol Hill that has had strong success, or at least success as we would expect given the pandemic of the last couple of years. Finally, considering our long conversation about waste in our city, I am excited to hear and happy to hear that the developers have chosen to rehabilitate the existing structure instead of dumping it all into our landfill. It will help our planet. It will also help us remember the hotel from its heyday back in the 1950s and 60s and even 1970s. So I intend to vote for this, and I hope my colleagues will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hinds. Councilmember Kniech.
Thank you, Council President. I've listened carefully to the presentation tonight and to the testimony. I want to thank Tracy Huggins in part, who reached out very early when this project was being contemplated to ask what is the best standards that could be used. And, I sent the recommendation of using Be Connected, someone who's not a professional relocation assistance provider in the realm of urban renewal, but is in the business of placing people who are deeply low income and in contingent housing into safer and more stable housing. And so I can't find flaws with the process that was used here to assist these residents with the stability that they might be gaining. I can't find flaw with residents who may be on the move and less interested in the services that are being offered. And I can't find flaw necessarily with the project. I think I understand why the neighborhoods nearby have supported it. I think it's a worthy project in terms of trying to provide a hotel in a neighborhood that can use something of this scale, whether it's for medical visits or entertainment visits. All of that is, no criticism and lots of good reasons for my colleagues who will be supporting it. I have a long and nuanced history with the tool of tax increment financing. Long before I was a council member, I was a watchdog of this tool. And I believe that it is neither good nor bad on its own. It's about how it's used. And I have really high standards. I believe that our public financing is rare. It's a privilege. It's not something that every project that's struggling to make ends meet can get. And even though each project is evaluated individually, it's not an infinite tool. There would be a limit to how many projects our finance department would be comfortable with in terms of the tax revenue that goes off the books rather than coming in when that project is completed. It would have limits in terms of, the board's willingness to adopt those projects. And so when a tool is rare and it's a privilege, it has to be used on the highest and most important uses, and there are uses that I don't think it's appropriate for. And so in this case, in spite of feeling that this team has done everything it can for vulnerable residents, I think about this project like I do some of the early urban renewal, which was single room occupancy housing, and that was raised en masse in places like Lodo. And replaced with other types of uses that, certainly are nice and lovely, but that to me is just not the legacy of what public financing tools should be focused on. And so in spite of the fact that there was a good process here and that this is substandard housing, I don't romanticize it. Keeping it would not serve these residents necessarily in terms of their long-term stability, certainly not their financial stability. In spite of all of those reasons, I just don't think this is an appropriate use of our public taxpayer dollars, particularly at this time. So I can't support the project tonight. I'll be a no, but I respect those who evaluated things differently. And, I hope that we can continue to prioritize the use of TIF in projects that are delivering the types of housing and the types of long-term sustainable housing that our city needs. When we're vetting projects. So that would be a higher priority for me than this type of project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kniech. Councilmember Ortega.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to express why I'm going to be voting yes for this tonight. DURA has historically been a tool used for lots of different kinds of projects. If you all remember, we voted on Costco, which previously was assigned for a Lowe's project, and then I think it got reassigned, if I remember that correctly. I can remember the Broadway Marketplace was done with TIF, and at that time, that didn't include housing. That was, to bring some commercial to that area of the city that was desperately needed. It did displace some residents, but they were relocated. The DURA funds were used for that purpose, as they have been for many, many projects. The 38th, it's the Denver Post site near the 41st and Fox project included tax increment financing. That's a mixed-use project that will include some housing. I could go on and on. The Stapleton had $300 million of tax increment financing, and that did include some affordable housing that was negotiated with the developer. to ensure that we were working to include low-income residents in that development. So the tool, and you all know about downtown and how much that was used throughout our downtown for various projects. So I wouldn't say that it solely has to be used for residential projects. Historically, it's been a mixed bag. And I think this is an appropriate use. I appreciate that each of the tenants who have been in that building were being relocated. And again, that's part of the use, or has been, can be reimbursed use of the funds that allow these projects to happen. Typically, TIF has been used as gap financing. In many cases, the developer would not be able to do a project without the tax increment financing to help close the gap and allow the project to exist. So those are reasons why I think we have to look at each one based on the merits of the project in front of us and not always try to compare one to another, because the geography and some of the issues with the site are all very different from one another. And this one has its own circumstances that I believe justify the need for us moving this forward. So I will be a yes vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ortega. And I do appreciate all of the public speakers who shared their perspective tonight as well. And based on the merits of the project and the current state of the property, I am in favor of this tonight and will be voting on it affirmatively as well. Madam Secretary, roll call on Council Bill 22-589.
CdeBaca?
No.
Kniech?
No.
Hinds?
Yes.
Black?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Flynn?
Aye.
Herndon?
Aye.
Kashmann?
Nay.
Ortega? Sawyer?
Aye.
Torres?
Aye.
Madam President?
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
3 nays, 9 ayes.
9 ayes. Council Bill 22-589 has passed.